Hi, I'm Virginia from Right Clinic, and here with me today is Eleanor Steele, who is the Medcomm's mentor. Thank you
Hi,
so
everybody.
Thank you, Eleanor, for being here today.
Hi, thank you. This is really lovely to be here, and thank you for inviting me to join you.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. I really appreciate your time, and you are so well known in the Medcomm's kind of arena. So having a little bit of your time to share with the audience is a real privilege. So thank you so much. So let's get started with the first question. What do you do, and how did you get into it?
Okay, so I have a slightly peculiar role in that I work as the Medcomms mentor. I've been doing that since 2020, and I offer training and mentoring for medical writers of all career stages, including people within agencies, freelancers, and people who are trying to get into the industry. And I came to that from being a medical writer myself. So I got my first job in Medcomms back in 2004 and worked my way up the medical writing side of things. And for a long time, I was working within agencies. So I worked at some tiny little independent boutique agencies. And I worked at huge agencies within massive networks and pretty much everything in between. And in some of those agencies, I was actually running the team. So managing all of the medical writers and the editors and leading all of the content responsible for the sort of scientific side of the business. And when I was in that position, I found that I very rarely had enough time or headspace to actually do all of the training and development for my team so that they could really progress. And so I looked outside the company for external support, somebody who could come in and do some of that training and support my team. I didn't find anybody. So I thought, this looks like a gap in the market, and decided to go freelance myself and gradually build up this business. And that's basically what I've been doing since 2020. So that is how I got into Medcomms, but also how I got into the training and mentoring side of things.
Amazing. So, what was your kind of background before you had discovered medical writing in 2004?
So I did a degree in neuroscience, and I completely loved the degree. And during my final year, I had to do a research project, which was around the developmental genetics of how the nervous system of zebrafish develops. And I thought that was going to lead into a PhD doing something fairly similar. But I discovered during that project that using microscopes for long periods every day gave me horrific migraines. And so I couldn't do that as my career. My brain would just fry. So I kind of came out of university and thought, I don't really know what I want to do now. My plan is not going to work. So I started temping and just doing kind of office jobs to make ends meet while I refigured what I was going to do with my life. And I thought about what I had enjoyed about my degree, and really doing actual science had not really been what I enjoyed. I had particularly liked the writing side of things. So I thought, okay, there must be something that I can do that includes writing and science. So I basically just started applying for any job that included the words science or medicine and writing, and eventually stumbled my way into my first Medcomms role and had no idea what Medcomms was all about at the time. And it was just quite lucky that it really suited me. And I stayed in the industry and have kind of enjoyed it ever since.
Amazing. So, how would you? I'm sorry that the microscopes cause so much migraines. First of all, that must have been really frustrating because you have a plan to do something and then
Yeah.
you can't follow through. And so, I suppose as a follow-up question, how would you say that the style of medical writing you used to do 10 years ago or even
Mhm.
20 years ago
Yeah.
has changed? And now I'm aging you not on purpose. You look fantastic.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
how would you say the spectrum of writing has changed compared to
Mm.
when you first started to now?
So I think the range of different content types that we work on as medical writers has definitely broadened. So in my first job, the account that I was working on was a publications account. Now, there are still plenty of agencies out there who have a publications account that is purely based around publications. So that will usually include submissions to congresses, so abstracts, and then the presentations that follow on from those, whether they are oral presentations or posters, and then the actual manuscript development. But nowadays, around that, you will get an awful lot of other things. So you might get video posters or visual abstracts or plain language summaries of papers, talking heads videos with the authors of a paper or presenters of a poster or something. And there are just so many more different ways that that core content that's being published so that you get a citation that can then be included in other papers or in other content to support the evidence. There's so many more ways that that is actually being distributed across the world, across the internet, to different groups of audiences. And so that has really kind of exploded in the time that I've been in Medcomms. But I think the proportion of Medcomms accounts that are just around publications has also decreased a lot. So there are many more different types of digital content that it's possible to do. And I think while sometimes the pharmaceutical industry has a tendency to be a little bit conservative maybe, and a little bit slow to adopt new things, they have had to catch up because of the pandemic. And that has given things a bit of a boost. But I think things were changing anyway before then. And so I've done an awful lot more digital content in the last 5 to 10 years than in the previous 10. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody, but I think it means that the different types of content, the different ways that we have to write as medical writers has really evolved. And so we have to be much more adaptable and flexible, and also be thinking not just about the content that we're trying to write about, so the facts we're trying to get across or the evidence that we're trying to get across to the audience, but we also need to be thinking much more clearly about how the audience will actually be interacting with that content and what that means for how we're putting it together, whether that's the visuals or the length of the content, the length of sentences and things like that. There are so many more different facets to the writing process than there used to be, I think.
That's really interesting. It's so interesting to see the shift in the types of content and also the different audiences that you can reach now, and also the different formats. So I think it was predominantly print, and just a small group of people would have access to that content. But now we're moving more into a public-facing, more accessible type of content that's digital and reaching a wider audience and an international audience as well.
Yeah,
So that's really
absolutely.
interesting. Yeah. I also wanted to ask you, how do you tend to work? What is your typical work day or work week? Do you work completely from home, or do you go and meet clients? Do you spend time in offices? What's your lifestyle like as a writer?
Okay, so I tend to work mainly from home. If I am going to be going out, then it's usually to go and do a training session somewhere. So sometimes that's going to be at a client office. Sometimes that will be in a co-working space, because I've worked a lot with agencies that don't necessarily have an office, or use co-working spaces as a way of bringing people together, because they might have a small office with only a couple of people based in, but if they want to get the whole team together, they need to go somewhere else. So that's something that is, I think, quite widely used in Medcomms, because it means that things are much more flexible. Or sometimes I will go and meet clients face to face, but usually it's all online and I'm at home. So I tend to spend most of my time sitting here. And I find that I work best when I've got multiple different projects on the go, because I need to have something that I can switch to when I reach a bit of a roadblock. I think when I first started working as a medical writer, I thought that to be a good writer, you had to start at the beginning and go all the way through to the end, and then have a finished piece of work that was very high quality. And it took me quite a long time to internalize the fact that that doesn't work as a process for me. I need to do things in stages and in layers, kind of thinking about the structure and thinking about what kind of thing I'm trying to build, and then bringing in the details and making sure that I've got the the content framed in the right way for the audience to actually meet the objective that I'm trying to achieve, and looking at that to sort of build it up in stages, and then taking some time away from it so that I can come back and review it with fresh eyes. Because without that step, you're going to miss things, you're going to miss problems, you're not necessarily going to be writing something in the right way for the audience, because often we need to write our way into a project. And that is a critical step to be able to write about the kind of complex things that we often are working on as medical writers. We need to be able to understand it. We need to get our heads around it. But then, because of the audiences that we're often working with, so I have mainly been working on content for healthcare professionals. So they may well be top tier experts in this particular field. And so they don't need all of that sort of background or explanation that I needed to get my head around it. So making sure that I'm looking at things from their perspective and stripping out anything that they're not going to need is a crucial step, but you can't see that when you're too close to it.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think one of the questions that I have, which is probably quite an interesting one, is how do you split your time between mentoring and writing? So what does the divide look like? Are you kind of 50-50 mentoring, 50% writing, 50% mentoring? And how do your clients find you? So do you have a preference for mentoring now, or do you have a preference for writing? So how do your clients find you, and what does the split look like?
So I think the split is very variable. I don't think that there is a fixed ratio kind of month to month or even week to week. It really depends on, from the mentoring side, how many people out there need some support. So I don't have kind of targets for the number of people that I want to be supporting at any one time. And I think I like having that sort of variety. So it's something that I don't try and kind of look for a certain amount of different types of work. I just see what's going on. And I've been in the industry for so long now that generally clients come to me because we already know each other. So there are a lot of people who are clients that I had previously worked with when we were both in the same agency, or we had worked together when I was sort of doing more freelance writing, and now they have come to me because they need some training, or they are colleagues of previous clients of mine and things like that. So I've got quite a big network just because of the length of time that I've been in the industry. So I've worked in a lot of different agencies, and then with my freelance work, I've worked with other agencies. And so it's all been very organic. And I think that's one of the nice things about Medcomms, is that it's relatively small and manageable. So you can kind of get to know quite a big proportion of people relatively quickly. Although, yeah, it's getting on for 20 years. It's my first job. So maybe it's actually taken a while.
I think that's a good thing. It's good to know that you have that reputation, and then also you've got all of these clients that are consistently coming back to you, and you're working with them every now and again when you need each other. So that is really comforting to know. And then also you are very flexible in how you kind of accommodate whatever is needed at the time. So that's really interesting to know. And so I guess the final question is, what's next on the horizon for you?
So I think the thing that I've been working on most this year, outside of just delivering training and mentoring and things like that, has been my YouTube channel. And I launched that in March 2023 and have been exploring lots of different topics, mainly to support people who are hoping to get into Medcomms, but also freelancers in Medcomms, because I think those two groups of people have a real need for information. And Medcomms is a bit of a mystery to people who aren't within the industry. So that's why I wanted to kind of support those people who are thinking about a career in the industry and thinking about what kind of work we actually do, the kind of careers that are available, the different types of agencies that work within this space, and how people can actually find the right career for them. And for freelancers, I think a lot of people go freelance because they are good writers, and especially people coming from an agency background, they've got a lot of writing experience, but they don't necessarily have the experience of building and running a business. And that is essentially what being a freelancer is. The business may be writing, but you still have to deal with the business aspect. And within agencies, the writing team doesn't tend to get much exposure to the more commercial side of things, especially on the more junior levels. So depending on when people go freelance or what their background is, they might not have that kind of commercial and financial understanding, the background in business development and things like that. And because I had quite a senior role before I left agencies, I had been involved in those aspects. So I can help support people actually building a business that works within the Medcomm space, because I understand how those factors work. But also I have got the freelance experience, so I can give that sort of practical side of things. I can explore that with people and see what's actually going to work for them as individuals, and give some tips and things on the videos, but then also potentially kind of turn that into individual support if that's what people need.
Perfect. So I'm sure that Eleanor is swamped with clients right now after that amazing podcast. So do connect with Eleanor. I'll leave the link to her LinkedIn down below, and also link to her fantastic YouTube channel, which is an amazing resource. And thank you so much for building that. I'm sure people will find amazing gems for all the hard work you put into creating those videos, which are so good. And I'm definitely a fan. I'm definitely subscribed. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe like right now to Eleanor's channel, the Medcomms Mentor. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and share all of your insights and wisdom and 20 years of learning, of experience. And I'm sure I'll invite you again in future to learn more from you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. All right, catch you at the next episode. Bye.
Bye.